But you have to be very, very, very specific and strategic about selecting the right markets and selecting the right properties, because not every property works. Because you will also hear somebody that has done that. They didn't put it in the right market and the right property, and they're losing money, right? That property could not support 100% financing. And so you put yourself in a bad situation. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore. I'm here with my main man, Mr. Dave Savolich, for Whiskey Wednesday. What do we got going today, buddy?
Hey, man. I see you wear the long sleeve shirt. Last week we were showing the biceps off. You know,
I know you were making fun of my arms, so I was like, I got to.
I was impressed.
I got to cover them up today.
I was impressed with them, dude. So,
I was getting a bunch of flack for my t-shirt, so I was like, I'm going to dress up today for Whiskey Wednesday.
Hey, we got a good agenda today.
Yeah.
So, want to talk a little bit about a webinar we're going to be putting on tonight. I'm pretty excited about that. There's a lot of good information. We'll kind of dive into that. We have topic of taxes and the benefit of taxes through short-term rental in the asset class. One of the best there is, and we want to just touch on that. We had a great testimonial from a member. And then, obviously, we got a couple questions. Dave from Boston sent one in, and if we have time, we got one other about contractors in working with them. If we don't, we'll move that to the next episode. So,
okay, well, let's we'll get started. Before we get started, we got an actual official sponsor of our episode. Graham Hardy, one of our Empire Club members. From
Graham, we know he's listening, bro.
Graham, this one's
Shout
for
out.
you, dude. I just had a sip of the old Fiddler Toasted. Graham knows I have our property up in Georgia, in Cherry Log, and this is an Atlanta distillery, so we're right up the road from it. He said, if you haven't tried that, I gotta get you a bottle. So Graham is our official sponsor of this week's Whiskey Wednesday and Old Fiddler Toasted. So cheers, Graham.
Yeah, cheers, Graham. Thanks for sending that in, buddy. You're a good guy.
Yeah, buddy. It was awesome.
So we got Surviving the Storm,
okay.
Strategies to Thrive in the Next Economic Shift. That is the title to the webinar that we're putting on, and super excited. I think it's very apparent and exciting for our members. A few members are going to join, but also for those who are thinking or considering joining Vodacy, and is this the right time? We're going to really dive into that tonight. I think it's going to be a great webinar. So
yeah, we've got an amazing training lined up that's really pertinent about what's going on in the economy right now. A lot of things that are on people's minds. You know, I do believe that there's a lot of indicators leading us to a recession, and we're going to talk about how we prepare for those, what we see as far as what's going to happen. We believe, at least my view of this world, of what I believe is going to happen going into this recession, what that means for us as investors, where the opportunities lie, how we can navigate that storm and come out on the other side way further ahead than where most people will come out. And so I'm really excited to talk about it. There's a lot of indicators. It's a really interesting time in the market. And we've got the U.S. election coming up. We've got a lot of indicators showing that the economy is slowing a bit, and we're seeing that. The Fed actually cut rates last week for the first time in 4 years. It's been a long time since we've seen a rate cut. So those are all good news things for investors, because we're like, oh, great. Some of the challenges we've had is we've had really high prices, really high interest rates, really low inventory, and we're starting to see some of those things come back into our favor with inventories going up a bit, prices are starting to slow down and kind of level off, and we're starting to see rates go down. But that also means that's an indication for a lot of those things that the economy's slowing down a little bit too, right? Rates go down when the economy starts to slow, because they want to spur liquidity into the markets, and they want to spur businesses to invest and investors to invest, and so they lower rates, right? Because they want to spur some things in the economy. So that's why you normally see stock markets drop when rates lower, right? Because the stock market is very forward thinking and forward looking, saying, oh, well, if the rates are coming down, that must mean that employment's going up, the economy's slowing down a little bit, so stocks usually contract a little bit.
Yeah.
With real estate, it's very interesting right now. We've also got a really interesting thing happening. We've had a lot of shadow buyers, a lot of shadow money sitting on the sidelines. We've got a record $6 trillion sitting in money market accounts across the U.S. It's a lot of money, and they're earning 4 or 5%. Well, typically when rates lower, their returns are going to lower as well, and so those investors are going to look to deploy. And usually when money's sitting in money market accounts, they have it there so that it's liquid, so that when they are ready to deploy, they can. And things are lining up for a lot of money to actually go back into the real estate market. Yeah. It's a very preferred asset class, and obviously we're on the short-term rental side of it, and so we also have to look at what's going on in the short-term rental economy, and how is demand, what are we looking like there. And because there's a lot of people waiting, we've seen inventory levels kind of slow down and level off, which is good, means less competition. And we've seen demand though continue to go up, and there's a lot of forecasts that I'm going to show and talk about on tonight's webinar. But I mean, there's a lot of economists, a lot of people smarter than us looking at a lot of different numbers, saying that the short-term rental market is poised to have over an 11% growth rate over the next 10 years, taking it from right now we're sitting at about $115 billion industry. By the end of 2024, probably somewhere in that 124, 125 billion dollar industry. We still have to tack on numbers for the fourth quarter, which is, there's a lot of money, but they're anticipating like a $315 billion industry by 2033. That's a lot of extra money, a lot of growth on the demand side. And so there's a lot of things to look at, and a lot of ways to interpret it, a lot of ways to navigate it. And tonight I'm excited to talk about, what our view of that world is, how we will navigate it, how we will hit base hits throughout this, a little bit of a downturn in the economy, but not necessarily a downturn in short-term rentals. But because the economy seems to be slowing a little bit, how we can take advantage of those opportunities, how we can take advantage of a lot of the people, because the majority of people, even the majority of people listening to us, Dave, will sit on the sideline. They'll sit and wait, right? That's the natural tendency, is to just do nothing and sit and wait. And so those people that start to educate themselves, prepare, gain the knowledge and the skill sets necessary to move forward, what happens is you hear a lot of people like myself, and a lot of people will say, hey, listen, don't ever waste a good recession. Don't ever waste a good crisis, because that's when you make your biggest moves. It's not that you go out and hit a whole bunch of home runs during this time. What happens is you're able to go stack the bases. If we stay in the baseball analogy, we're able to go hit base hits, and we load the bases up, right? And when we start to come out of that, because I've got loaded bases, all of a sudden that home run turns into a grand slam, and all this, and I look like a genius because I was stacking my assets.
But you were
during
prepared
this time.
and
I was preparing, right? It's not that we're swinging for the fence right now. We're being very, very conservative, but we're loading the bases. And when we load those bases, when we come out of it, in the typical recession lasts 17, 18 months. They're not super long. This recession, I believe, is going to hit more on the retail side of things, on restaurants, those types of businesses, because labor costs have gone up so much that those businesses their margins have shrunk so small that you get a lot of restaurants closing, got a lot of retail shops closing. And where the last recession in 2008 through 10 was more of a real estate recession. It was a real estate crash, right? It was a real estate problem. This one, I don't think is going to affect real estate nearly as much. In our last one before 2008 was in the early 2000s. It was the dot-com crash. It was a lot of those new tech startup companies that started to really suffer a little bit. And so recessions typically affect different segments of the economy. And I think this one's going to affect more the, restaurants, retail, the probably it's going to hurt the most for those people that aren't making as much money. And so the people that really can't afford to get hurt are probably going to get hurt the worst because of some of the policies and some of the inflationary things that are going out right now. Because, and I think that those that are able to make moves with that $6 trillion sitting in money market accounts, that liquidity, investors that listen to us that have the ability to go out and take some of that earned income, that active income, put it into assets, I think they're going to be poised to make some really big gains in the next couple of years, especially as you start to come out on the other side of this.
Well, and a lot of good data. I know you've prepared, and you're going to have a lot of good insights and a lot of slides. And, I think it's going to be a great little process and blueprint for those who are committed. And I say committed because those who are going to make this a priority and decide to make a decision and get off the sidelines are going to be successful in the coming, months to years. So those who are excited about the opportunity to hear it, lucky enough to be on it, and committed to be on it, I think it's going to be great. So
I'm excited. And by the time this one airs, the webinar will be passed, right? We're doing it tonight. And so by the time this one airs in a couple of weeks, it's going to be behind us. But that doesn't mean these aren't things that you should be thinking about, right? And then really lining up with, if you're thinking, hey, I really want to take advantage of this, really do some due diligence and line up with somebody who's been there, who's got the experience, because you don't want to navigate these times on your own. You don't want to navigate this kind of stuff. Our goal is to help people accelerate their progress, but also avoid really costly mistakes by doing it themselves, and or choosing somebody that has never done it and trying to help them navigate too, because there's a lot of people that are like, hey, I'll help you do it. They've never done it before.
Yeah.
And so you want to be, and in this webinar tonight, I'm going to talk about how and what I learned during the navigating short-term rentals from 2006 to 2010.
Yeah.
I bought my first one in 2006. And so when things started sliding in 2008, I had to deal with an actual real estate slide with this asset class and learned a lot of lessons along the way that we can pass on.
Yeah, good. All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk about, we had an amazing post. Lisa, one of our members from Hawaii, she put a post in our school platform. That's our Vodacy Empire Club platform, and it was awesome. And so I think it's worth sharing. I'm going to read it word for word here, but it just gives you the insights on how important it is to take advantage of short-term rental tax advantages in this asset class. And so she says, the title is Tax Cost Segregation Pays for Vodacy Membership. Aloha from Maui. Just wanted to share with you all that I had a wonderful experience with Mike Pine. Mike Pine is our recommended partner. He's our expert tax advisor. He has a coaching call every Thursday for our members that they can jump on and ask questions and get insights. It's an amazing resource. But she said, a wonderful experience with Mike Pine and his team for handling my taxes in 2023. I also chose to do the recommended cost segregation study with Chuck, and that was 100% worth it. Instead of paying $50,000 in taxes like I expected, I'm getting a $60,000 refund. Yay. I will say that the importance of keeping the material participation log is a pain in the neck, but totally worth it. I had to go back and recreate a lot. However, because I'm such a fanatic about documenting everything with photos, it was significantly easier than expected when combined with the credit card with my credit card records and schedule and I keep on my calendar. I now have a great time keeping system in place with that I will maintain moving forward to prove my participation in the case of an audit. This one item made my Vodacy investment worthwhile. It itself, let alone all the other great benefits. Great job and thank you to the Vodacy team. My property is listed before if you want to provide any feedback. So she also listed her property. But what a great testimonial.
Yeah.
Awesome tax benefits. I mean, talk about 100% turnaround from thinking you're going to pay X amount and you're getting even more than you thought you were going to pay. I mean, huge benefit, paid for a membership over and over, and she's often the next, scaling to the next portfolio.
Yeah, so it's really the tax benefits of short-term rentals are they're so far beyond what most people even realize, and we know that because when people join our high-end mastermind, our Empire Club, and we introduce them to some of these concepts, we introduce them to Mike Pine, Kevin Schneider, Revo Tax Preparers, tax advisors. Those guys are the best in the business. They're our team, right? And they host weekly coaching calls. So you got the best in the business at your fingertips to do this stuff. And when they start to dive in and they realize, man, instead of paying $50,000, I got a $60,000 return. I mean, it's $110,000, difference in swing in paying versus making, right? And and it happens over and over and over again. We see it all the time, and it's a testament to the team and that we put together. Like we talk a lot about, we don't talk a lot about on the
podcast.
Should more. We probably should more. The team that we've assembled is second to none. Right. There is nobody that has a better team out there, period. I will go up against anybody that has a program of coaches and what we've put together when it comes to the experience of our designers, our photographers, our tax guys, with Mike and Kevin, our marketing experts, our self-management experts, or all of these different people, the experts that we bring in. We have over 45 live coaching calls every single month with the best in the business. Mm-hmm. And so, when you read these, when Lisa has this experience and we read through that and she posts that, we just take it for granted that that's what we have. But, it's a huge benefit just to know one little strategy on the tax side of buying these properties, right? And it's it can pay you, and it is very unique to short-term rentals. If you're not a real estate professional, you're not able to write stuff off against your active income. And short-term rentals have a loophole that you are able to do so without being a real estate professional. Right. That's awesome. And once you understand the qualifications for it, you can use it to really compound and start to build that portfolio. Now all of a sudden, she's got an extra $110,000 swing to put into the next property. Talk about accelerating your portfolio growth. That's one strategy of many that you start to compound. And people ask us all the time in the Empire Club, well, when we're talking to a prospect, they're like, where am I going to get the return? I'm like, well, there's a lot of places you're going to get a return on it, right? And this is just one example of many.
Yeah, awesome, good. All right, we got a couple questions here. Let's jump into the first one. This is from Dave from Boston. He sent us to my email address. So Dave, thanks for sending that in. Appreciate it. Obviously, you're an avid listener because that's probably where you got the email address. So thanks for sending that out. But could you speak in more detail about strategies of leveraging equity in one property to purchase another? Example, under what conditions does essentially 100% financing by borrowing in form of a HELOC for a down payment and a mortgage make sense?
Yeah, great question. Because we just assume that, hey, listen, I've got this equity. Maybe I should leverage it into another property, go buy a property. But to Dave's point, when you do that, when you borrow a HELOC for your down payment and then you get a mortgage for the rest of it, you're 100% financing a property. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that can work awesome. Sometimes it can't. And in the direct question is, what times does that make sense? Well, the direct answer is if the property can support it, right? The property and the market, the revenue that you're going to generate can support that much financing and that much debt. Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. And so that's where it comes down where it's really important to understand your numbers, really understand and dial in the underwriting to be able to say, hey, listen, my goal is to put 100% financing and leverage on this property. Does this market and property support that? Does it have the revenue potential to cover that much debt service along with all of the other expenses? And sometimes you will find that, I'm still getting a really good return on that money, good return on that equity. You hear us talk about that a lot of times. A lot of investors talk about their return on equity and where they're going to place it and how they're going to use it. And that's essentially what you're doing. You're pulling equity from something else, another property, and putting it into this one. And are you getting a good return on that? Was that a good decision? And it makes sense if the numbers make sense. And so if that property, if the market can support that debt service, absolutely makes sense. Do it, get a good return on it. Ultimately you could probably parlay it, and then that property is going to have some equity, and you do it again and again and again. Many investors do that, but you have to be very, very, very specific and strategic about selecting the right markets and selecting the right properties, because not every property works. Because you will also hear somebody that has done that. They didn't put it in the right market and the right property, and they're losing money, right? That property could not support 100% financing. And so you put yourself in a bad situation. You put your back against the wall because now you've got this negative equity or a negative performing property, and because it can't support that much debt service. So it all comes down to running and understanding the numbers. And that's why we're so diligent, for many different reasons, but why we're so detailed and diligent about our underwriting. It just pains me when I hear people doing their underwriting by putting it into, one of the many, tools out there and just putting your address, putting your bedrooms and bathrooms. These tools are not good enough yet, at least that I've seen, and I use them all to check them. They're not good enough yet to be able to tell you your actual revenue potential on individual properties. They can give you a general idea. They're not going to dial it in for you the way you need to dial it in to make these types of decisions, right? And so, maybe you're pulling it out of a primary residence, right? And all of a sudden that HELOC's going to start going. And most of the time you are. Most HELOCs now are on primary residence. In fact, 99% of them are. There are some lenders, unique, portfolio type lenders that will do HELOCs on investment properties, but for the most part, they're going to be on your primary residence. You're saying, okay, if I'm going to pull this out, it's going to have this much extra of a payment. Can that property pay that payment plus the regular debt service plus the other expenses? And the answer might be no many times, depending on where rates are at, where prices are at, everything else. But how many members do we have that have properties that are 100% leveraged and they're making really good returns on them? It's because they were able to select the right properties in the right markets that could support that. Right.
Well, and we always talk about, the number one reason people fail in this market, well, one of them is they buy the wrong property in the wrong area. And so part of that, and the majority of that reason, is because they don't understand how to evaluate, underwrite, and do the analysis. And so it's the second part of Dave's question is, how do you understand? Well, you've got to have a process and a program that really dives in and teaches you the underwriting. And I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to kind of ask you that. But it really is about using the right tools and the right data, understanding the numbers. Because, like you said, you can look online and you can just put in an address and you can say, don't let your future rely on just plugging that into some software program. You really need to dive in and let somebody else put a second set of eyes on it. Let somebody else review it, like we do here at Vodacy. And so that then you know if it's really going to cover that debt service.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you won't talk to any serious investor that owns these properties, that buys these properties, and has had success for the long term. That none of them, ourselves included, go and just put in an address in STR Insights, AirDNA, Rabu, any B&B Calc, whatever all these tools are that everybody's using. They're all really good tools for the most part. Like, they can be very useful. You've got to know how to use them, right? It's just like a contractor. He might have a tool belt full of tools, and for him, they're awesome. They work great because he knows how to use them. I go put the tool belt on and I don't know how to use half of them, and they do me no good, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll mislead me down the wrong road, thinking that I've got the right tool. And the hard part is like, all of these tools are going to hit and be accurate at times, but as an educated investor, you've got to be able to recognize when it's accurate, when it's not. Like, there's times where I've actually put in an address into Rentalizer on AirDNA and it spits out the right number. Like, it's what we would actually underwrite it at.
Yeah.
But there's so many times it's off, either high or low. It's not usually, it's not one or the other. It's all over the board based on what information it's pulling out on the comps that it ultimately pulls for you. If it pulls the wrong comps, you're going to be off.
Yeah.
And so, but if you don't recognize when it's off, doesn't do you any good if it's right 20% of the time. You're wrong 80% of the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Good. Yeah. So, Dave, thanks for sending that in. Again, as you guys have questions, we really appreciate it. We want to answer the questions you guys have. So send them to support@vodacy.com and we'll make sure we get them on an upcoming episode. So thanks again for your questions. But
Dave from Boston. I like it.
We're going to wrap it up today. We're going to save that contractor question for next week.
Okay.
And again, appreciate everybody joining, and great episode. Good insights.
We appreciate Graham. I'm gonna finish my glass of Fiddler and Fiddler Toasted and enjoy that. So Graham, I appreciate you sending us that bottle. It was awesome. And so, guys, we'll wrap it up. We know how valuable your time is. We appreciate you spending it with us on these short, sweet, to the point episodes. If you have questions, Dave told you how to send them in. We love when you send those questions in. If you've got anybody that you would like to share the show with, those things are very much appreciated here at Vodacy. And so if you've got somebody that would like to be a part of these conversations, walk into the short-term rental game with their eyes wide open, that's always our goal. Share the show. Those things help us. If you have more than 30 seconds, like it, review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing that I ask you to do at the end of every episode is pick that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends. Cheers, brother.
Cheers, buddy.